Welcome back, everybody, to the Blue and Gold podcast. I'm here with my esteemed co-host and co-host of the annual Blue and Gold Summit, Geoffrey Whiteside. And we have the distinct pleasure today of talking to a very gnarly goat, a very well-networked gnarly goat from the class of 2001 from the Amherst in Annapolis, the Harvard on the Severn, Scott
on the Severn.
Mackes.
That's awesome.
If you are involved in entrepreneurship in the Service Academy community or real estate in the Service Academy community or really the veteran community at all, then you've probably run across a venture that Scott has backed, people that know of Scott and adore him for everything that he does within the community. And it's a pleasure for us because he's equal parts humble and successful, which is, our favorite personality of someone to have on the podcast. He's also coming to the Blue and Gold Summit in Annapolis. He's a busy man, so we're super honored that he's going to stop by. And even just getting a quick coffee with him at the Alumni Center is going to be one of the highlight of my day. So, Scott, Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, fellas, for having me on the podcast. And congrats on all that you guys are doing. So, the Facebook group that you have built, I think it's over 4,000 people. I didn't even know that. I'm like, what is this Facebook group? The USNA Property Network. And I posted there and I was like, oh, yeah, I think you said I was the gnarly goat. So that's the first. This is the second time I've been referred to as the gnarly goat. But congrats on your initiative and then starting this podcast and connecting Naval Academy goats.
Thank you so much. So where are you in this world? Because I see a maritime chart behind you. So you're either in Loose Hall or you're in your home office.
Loose Hall. Yeah. I'm not in Loose Hall, but I am in Charleston, South Carolina, Mount Pleasant to be exact. That's a chart of the Chesapeake Bay that I took when I was on shore duty. I was a navigation instructor up in Newport, Rhode Island, and that was a going away gift to myself as I was exiting the Navy back in the day. So
that's really cool.
That is awesome.
The one from Loose Hall is all marked up with like an F probably on it.
Single digits.
That is awesome.
Yeah, the 37 is not the course. That's the grade.
Tell the goats a little bit about yourself, just like your background, what year you graduated from the academy, what you do after. Just give us a little rundown, and then I'm excited to hop into the business questions myself. So,
yeah, man, we can skip right to that. But just a little bit of background on me. I grew up in Maryland, played sports all my life. Grew up on the eastern shore of Maryland in a town called Salisbury. I was recruited to play baseball at the Naval Academy, so that was my ticket in. Was my backdoor entrance.
It wasn't your SAT scores?
The SAT scores weren't bad, but I don't think they would. I could have hung my hat on them to get in right away. I probably would have had to go to a prep school or something like that.
But both of yours truly.
Yeah. So anyways, the academy gave me a chance to play Division I baseball, and really just had an opportunity of a lifetime. I didn't really think it at the time.
I know. That's well said.
I wish I think back to the time at the academy, and I know you guys are a little bit younger than me, but I wish I didn't rush through it as much. I wish that I didn't, have an apartment out in town and break every rule, that there was and and all of those things. I kind of wish I was was a better student, and I wish I would have, invested more in that experience. Not that I didn't, but I felt like I was just trying to get by and just doing whatever it took to just graduate and get by without really soaking in the experience that we had. So that's just kind of like I don't know if that's a regret, but if looking back on my time at the Naval Academy, it was just a unique opportunity.
I think that's such a common emotion that people feel. I feel like that too. I just took the walk down Stribling for granted. Simple things like that. Just you're in the most remarkably beautiful place. Like a springtime walk around Stribling, I would trade a lot of things for that now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I totally know what you mean. Salisbury is pretty small. Were there a lot of Naval Academy kids that went just because it's close to Navy, or how did you even find out Navy was an option? Just baseball?
Yeah, well, so I mean, we're only an hour and a half from Annapolis, so compared to somebody that lives in like Wyoming, right? So everybody kind of knows about the Naval Academy in Annapolis just because we're in the same state. But was there a lot of people that from my town that went to the Naval Academy? There was one actually. So one of my buddies growing up, our dads coached soccer together. And as I was kind of going through the application process, like he was already accepted. I'm like, and we had went to different high schools, so I didn't really know where he was going to college. And so it was really this kind of interesting story how like we were childhood friends and played sports together. And then I found out, kind of junior year of high school that he got accepted to the Naval Academy. And then I was going through the process of the application process. And yeah, we became plebes together, graduated together. He was the best man in my wedding, and it was kind of a unique experience. So, yeah, he's one person that from my town. So we're a part of the same class. So I'd say probably every year there's a few.
Who was your senator or congressman? Was it a storied Maryland name like Dutch or like
Sarbanes, man, like Sarbanes from Sarbanes and Oxley. So
Sarbanes was mine too. That's why I asked. It was his son, probably.
Yeah.
Sarbanes Jr.
So Paul Sarbanes was his brother Tony Sarbanes lived in Salisbury, and
okay.
so
That's right.
Him and my dad were good friends, and may have something to do with
nepotism.
me getting at least a second look, or getting a look at a nomination. But yeah, he took made a bet on me, and it worked out. So
that's super
I
cool.
got my nomination from Paul Sarbanes.
That's really neat.
That is awesome. What'd you do after the Naval Academy? What'd you like service select? What'd you do in the Navy?
SWO. I think that was my only choice.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Hoo-yah.
Motivator.
Yeah, I did see something with my class rank on it recently, and I can't remember. I don't know if it was like an alumni association magazine or something that they were going to publish. I forget what it was, but it was definitely in the 900s.
One of those numbers you just wish didn't follow you. Yeah.
What was your experience as a SWO like? I'm just curious. I hear, my experience was different than other people's. What was your experience like?
And I'm doing the math. If you graduated in 2001, 4 months after graduation was a pretty significant event in U.S. history.
Yeah. So I was underway on a frigate, and we were having a great time, man. It was like a party on the sea. So we were a part of this. I don't even know if they still do it. Standing Naval Forces Atlantic, like a sniffle cruise. That's what they used to call it.
Sniffle.
And so all these different ships from different countries, the NATO countries, deployed together. And so there was probably maybe a dozen, but maybe a little less. So between 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that, ships that would just pull into ports together and have fun, basically.
That's
right. And then we would go out
cool.
to sea and do these exercises together, like these formations, and which is always fun when you've got all these people speaking different languages, trying to like put the ships into Tango, X-ray, like trying to, I was so long ago, I can't remember how it all worked, but yeah. So we would go out to sea and do these different exercises together. And then we would pull into ports together. And it was just like a party. Honestly, we would pull into a port. One of the ships would host like the officers from the fleet, the ships. So literally like the Dutch ship, right? We go onto the Dutch ship
with the beards.
There's Heineken and Amstel, like,
oh my gosh.
Dutch
so you started out doing booze.
The world changed so much, and you weren't even probably expecting how much your life was going to change.
The party screeched to a halt. So we were out at sea, and the captain got onto the one MC and it's like, hey, something terrible has happened, and was passing along as much information as he could, about the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and that was kind of, certainly life-changing, right, for everybody. And but what was really interesting about it was from then on, kind of when we pulled into ports, there was a lot more security measures. Like we couldn't go out into town and this and that. And so I do remember the first port that we pulled into together after 9/11. It was really nice how the other countries supported us, right? So, they would invite us over to their ship to, kind of mingle, and wanted to like help us get the latest news, because it was hard to get news on the ship back then. And so, but that was what was really interesting, and what I thought was pretty cool, to see the support that we did get from the other countries. And so anyways,
it was less party, more like actually seeing, national relations at that point, because they were probably assisting in things. That's cool.
Yeah. So
did your
life
watch
is a skill,
schedule
though. So that was my first
increase, or what was the watch schedule like from, prior to 9/11, and then 9/11 happened? Did it like drastically increase? Like just what was it like?
This was 23 years ago, man. The watch schedule. So maybe we went from like, gosh, I don't even remember if there was like maybe.
That's how bad it was.
3. Maybe if there was different, like maybe I don't think it was like on and off and on again, like with only like 2 watch teams, but maybe it was 3.
Okay.
I've always heard frigate watches are savagery, but I don't know if that's still true. But
they did cancel some of the ports. Like we were supposed to pull into Tunisia. They ixnayed that idea, and so they changed the schedule, and it was just a lot different, and but anyways, but that was my first experience. That was even before we went to SWAS. So that was, I don't know how they do it now, but graduated May, went straight to the ship, and then my SWAS date was in November. So going into SWAS, I had already like gone underway for 4 months or something like that. So
that real SWO cruise.
That was pretty salty. Yeah, pretty salty.
How long did you stay in the Navy, and then when did you know you were getting out?
I knew I was kind of getting out
in September. Yeah.
Honestly, no. I knew I never really wanted to make it a career, because I wanted to be around my family, right? So that family was really important to me, and my dad was always home to, throw batting practice and, coach the little league team and do all of that. And so with that in mind, like that's my number one priority is family. And I mean, as you guys know, being in the military and being deployed and then also having a family, it's like you miss a lot of stuff, right? And sometimes those families fall apart, or, and so that was always, so I knew that I was probably not going to make it a career. But that was really the reason. And so I got out, I don't know, 5 years and 3 months, whatever, August of 2006. And then the real adventure began.
Yeah, that's where we want to jump in now. So
what do you want to do with your life?
Did you go to business school? Did you not? How did you decide one way or the other? For me, it was very clear because I got rejection letters. So I didn't.
Yeah, for me, so I met my wife when I was in Newport at DCA school. And that was before my second sea tour or whatever, duty station. So met her in Newport. Then I moved to Washington State, and we kept a long distance relationship. And then I was lucky enough to get orders back to Newport for shore duty. But she came from a family of an entrepreneurial minded family. Like her father was in business. He was a real estate investor. They owned a chain of Dunkin' Donuts stores. And
cool.
It's like, man, like I want to go do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
that's cool.
Like, little did I know the work that it takes to, do that kind of stuff and the risks that it takes. But she encouraged me to go to business school. So I did. And I loved it. I went to the University of Rhode Island, had an evening program. They probably
Cool.
still do. So I drive into Providence at night and with a couple of Navy buddies and take business classes. And
That's sick.
That
and
is
I
awesome.
was just like, I can't say that I didn't, the engineering classes at the academy, I was good at math, so I was able to just kind of get through them, with like C's. But being able to apply, like, I felt like being good at math and loving numbers to business and like, how can you make money was just super fascinating to me. So I was really engaged. I loved it. Knew I wanted to do something in business, but at that time I had no idea what, so my wife's family was a positive influence. Being able to see what that life looks like. And then the business classes kind of gave me a foundation of knowledge. But it was probably a 10-year journey from that point to, really kind of taking some sort of a leap into the entrepreneurial world. So
let's fast forward through that 10 years because
yeah, we can skip all that.
I have one question. I always ask people who got their MBA, do you think it's, was it worth it? Do you find it like helpful now? Or do you recommend just like diving in?
I recommend both, right? So I think having an educational foundation for, what you're going to do for your career is super helpful because it gives you a framework, right?
Mm-hmm.
But without that framework, like if you don't know what a profit and loss statement is, or you don't know, how to calculate the future value of money and all of that kind of stuff, like what debits and credits, all like having that fundamental knowledge gives you a framework of like, well, this is how the business world works, right? Mm-hmm. And so it gives you more confidence, I think, going into it. However, right, there's a lot of things that business school doesn't teach you, right? And a lot of those things we learned in the military, or we are a part of us, of why we were in the military, that can't be taught in business school. But us having gone to the academy, it's like we know how to persevere. We know we have grit. We grind it out, right? We find a way to make things happen. Those are the intangibles. And I think why a lot of academy grads, this is an academy grad podcast, right? So why, I'm just going to say it, like why a lot of academy grads are able to succeed as business owners, because they have those intangibles. What they don't have a lot of times is that knowledge. And so going to business school, now you can get like some really cool certificates. Like I was looking at one the other day. I think I'm going to do it. It's a commercial real estate investing certificate. And I'm like,
awesome.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And like 8 weeks, like you put 3 or 4 hours in a week, and and I think I was looking at the one at the Wharton School, and that gives me a framework, right? So you look at a deal, somebody's doing an apartment deal or a retail and whatever it might be, in the a larger type of a deal, it's helpful to have that framework. Are you going to learn how to do the deal just from getting a certificate or going to school? Probably not, right? You got to actually do one. But having that knowledge and that framework, I think, is super, super valuable.
So at business school, you learn the framework to be able to say, okay, this is how a business works. Were you also then exposed to, oh, there's a network of people here. This is also how business works. Did you learn that at business school? We're like, wow, if I meet people.
A little bit. So this was like an evening program. So there was a lot of, career changers, or there was some Navy folks, buddies that went through the business school. Honestly, man, the network, the academy network, has been the most powerful network. Not that I didn't go to like, what's that?
Isn't it funny? Because when you're a firstie, you hear that from older graduates, but you don't feel it yet.
Yeah, you don't feel it yet. Absolutely.
You're just like, dude, this is brutal. I just want to graduate. I want to get away.
Yeah, but I don't want to see you guys ever again.
All of a sudden, totally. All of a sudden, you gain 20 pounds, and everyone around you is part of your network again, and it does start to become really powerful. So that's interesting to hear that you relied a lot on that network, maybe even more than your business school experience.
Yeah, there's like probably nobody that I keep in touch with from business school that wasn't a veteran. Zero, like absolutely. There's actually zero people that I keep in touch with. Not that I went to a famous business school. Maybe that would have been different if I went to, but it was an evening program. It gave me the knowledge that I needed. And I made 3 or 4 good buddies, Navy buddies, who went through the program together, and we'd go out for beers and whatever after the classes. And, but it was fun. Yeah. And I still keep in touch with some of those guys.
That's cool. So what was your first jump into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So let's see, what was it? The first thing that worked was
right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I kind of went down the and this was back in like 2010. And so I kind of became good at marketing, right? Because I had to like figure out a way to create an income on the side of having a day job, which was like kind of difficult, right? We had 2 little kids, and I was like, oh, I'll just start like an online business. And so none of the online business stuff like really worked.
Yeah.
But I kind of started like doing some coaching on the side, like just wanting to surround myself with other entrepreneurial minded academy grads. And we would do like these mastermind meetups like once a month on Google Meetups back in the day. I kind of went down the coaching route at first, like wanting to be like a coach and that sort of thing. And that led me to take the become a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I don't know if you guys have ever taken the Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment.
Yeah.
But it was super helpful to me, right? So I loved it, man. It like told me that, hey, you're futuristic, and these are all the things you're not doing in your day job, and which is probably why it's not a good fit for you. And but it was really if you guys haven't taken it, or the folks listening haven't taken the Clifton Strengths Assessment, I highly recommend it. I became a Gallup strengths coach, but then I never really did anything with the coaching. But what I did do is launch an online store called strengthsmugs.com, selling coffee mugs with people's top 5 strengths.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, man, it worked too. I was sitting in my office, like at my job back in the day, and it was like Friday afternoon, probably about this time, of the day. And as we record this, and I had my online store, I found a print shop to print the mugs, and there was a Facebook group of a bunch of Gallup people in it. There was maybe, 5,000 people in this Facebook group. And so I posted a picture of my mug and a link to my Shopify store, and I got an order like 2 minutes later.
That's awesome. That's the best feeling.
Yeah. So we still do that today. It's it's kind of a side hustle type deal, but it's fun, man. We get like orders every day from different companies across the country that order the mugs for their teams. And
that's cool.
And so that was my first little venture, man. That after trying a bunch of stuff and throwing things against the wall, that was the first one that stuck.
I love that. And then
awesome.
How did the Service Academy Business Mastermind come about?
Yeah, so that kind of came about, I was kind of looking back at the coaching stuff and like the different people I had worked with. And the people that I really enjoyed having conversations with were academy grads, and they wanted to start a business. We just had a lot in common. Me and that was like my tribe, right? So, with the Strengths Mugs online store, it gave me confidence. I was, it was a passive income stream. I just had this online store. People would order the mugs. I had a print shop doing all of the fulfillment. And I was like, man, this is really cool. And I'm not an idiot. Like I figured something out. I created something that is like people.
I have to tell myself that a lot during the day too.
Yeah. And so I wanted to surround myself with entrepreneurial minded academy grads. And so And I had a podcast before the SABM podcast. It was called Success Starts Sunday. And it had like a total of like 3 listeners over the course of a year. So on Sunday, it was like the people that did listen are like, man, stop, don't make fun of it. It was a good idea. But the thesis for Success Starts Sunday was, hey, the success starts on Sunday. Like Sunday, you set your goals, like you plan out your week, and I'm sure that's true, right? But it was kind of a grind to do the podcast. I didn't have guests. It was me just kind of like riffing through some sort of an idea that might help somebody achieve some level of success.
That's tough to do
every Sunday
all by yourself. Tough.
And I did it. I can't believe I did it for a whole year. I should have stopped after like a month of just being. I felt drained at the end of it. I was just like, oh, like, do I have got to do this again? And I kind of didn't like it. But what it did, I did develop the muscles too. I knew how to. Then I found I still use the guy that helped me produce the podcast today. Like almost awesome. Probably 10 years later. So I found him. I figured out how to do a podcast, and then I just stopped it. After years, like what, this is draining me out. This is a waste of time. And maybe that was.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Like, is that a Service Academy fault where we do have grit and we don't realize when we're just pushing too hard on something that's not working?
It's a huge fault. It's a huge blind spot, and I think we need to be aware of that trait in us because it can work to our advantage, right? When we really believe in something. So I think the saying is, never quit the vision, but you can quit the strategy, right? It's okay to quit the strategy, but it's not okay to quit the vision, right? And so my vision was much bigger than a podcast or much bigger than, Success Starts Sunday. That was like a strategy, or that was a tactic, or that was just something that I was doing on the way to a bigger vision. So, but it is okay to quit. It's okay to people, they can let themselves off the hook. If there's something that they're doing that's draining their energy, quit, just stop, So what quitting did for me with the Success Starts Sunday podcast was it just freed up my energy to go do something else. So I took 6 months off. I just stopped doing it. And this was maybe towards the end of the year, December or something, I just stopped. And then by like 6 months later, I was like, man, you know what went wrong with that podcast? I didn't have somebody to talk to. It wasn't niche-y enough or at all. And wouldn't it be cool if there was a podcast where somebody interviewed Academy grad business owners?
I like your hypothesis.
And I was like, and I think that will work, right? You know where to find them. When you started the USNA Property Network on Facebook, like you knew where to find people to invite to that group, right? And that's why people joined the group, is because that was your natural network. And so I knew where to find people to listen to the SABM podcast. I just needed guests. I knew how to do a podcast. So I got Tyler Merritt, who started 9 Line Apparel. Yeah. He's a West Point grad. He was guest number 1. And then a few buddies like, hey man, you want to be on a podcast? And sure. Right. And so, but I wanted to lead with a good story. Not that my buddies didn't have a good story. They had great stories, but so I built this email list and I emailed out Tyler Merritt's interview to like the list, and it got more downloads in a day, I think, than Success Starts Sunday got in a year. So
that's awesome.
That's a good strategy for when to pivot. And so now you can actually, so 10X Vets, is that part of that or is it different?
Yeah. So SABM Group, I started that 7 years ago, 2017. It was just a podcast. And I would do we called it the online networking meetup. And so every month on Zoom, I would go out and invite people to this meetup, this digital networking meetup. And man, like people were like, what's Zoom? Like, don't worry about it. Just like click this link. And it was at night. So like 8 o'clock at night, people would like log in once a month, and there'd be like 30 or 40 people there every month networking, giving
That's
their
awesome.
1 minute, quick 30-second intros. And like SABM was like this digital networking platform, and it still is. But that was the beginning. And I didn't really have a business model for it other than, hey, it's cool. People are getting value from it. It's more efficient than like having to drive to downtown Boston or DC or somewhere to go to some sort of quarterly alumni meetup, right? And so that was the beginning. I had to kind of figure out what the business model was, but I worked for free for a couple of years, trying just to create value, and it was fun for me. But 10X Vets came from that. 10X Vets, I started that in 2020 with Bill Militello. We do 10X Vets together and the Academy Fund together. He's a Navy 92 grad. 10X Vets is a membership based executive community of military veteran business owners and investors. So I like to think of it as like an EO or a Vistage, but it's like people that have a lot in common, right? They're all like, it's probably 80% grads, not limited to Academy grads, but it's
naturally filtering to grads probably.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What's like the coolest success story you've seen that network kind of produce? Is it two grads meeting each other that start something, or is it they're each having problems in a business and they can solve it from a third party perspective, or what's kind of the biggest win?
Yeah, it's amazing, the power of when people come together to work on projects together and grow businesses together. Like, you two guys are doing this podcast together, and I don't know the extent of your relationship, but it's got
deep.
your battle
It's
buddy, right?
Very deep.
And
we talk every day.
And so that's where the real wins happen, I feel like, is when people team up together, and it happens so much. I mean, I don't even know if I can point to like one specific story. There's so many examples of, people who have formed a partnership together, people who have invested in each other, into a deal, somebody's deal. I see that almost every week. Somebody's investing in, I find out about it, like, oh, like, hey, I invested in that company, and and it's like there's all of these different ways that people can connect, whether it's via our Zoom calls, workshops, or in person. We do regional gatherings 3 to 4 times a year in really cool places, and they're not big conferences, but it's like 20 to 30 people where you get to know everybody who's in the room.
That's, I think, more powerful than big conferences, because you actually get to know people. They're probably more willing to be forthright about what they're struggling with in their business or personal life versus a huge conference. Like, you're not going to get into that in a big conference.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to come to Charleston, South Carolina, October 1st.
Hell yeah.
I might come down. I've actually been to Charleston.
Let's do Charleston. That'd be great. That's my birthday.
Yeah, we've got one of the 10X Vets members, his business partner, or he runs an Airbnb kind of short-term rental course and owns a yacht, works out of off of a yacht in
I would love to come. I would love to come.
He's like, hey, man,
that sounds awesome.
I don't know what it was about your pitch, but I'm in.
Let me see if he'll take everybody out on his yacht for the afternoon. So that's part of our. So it's cool stuff like that, right? It's gonna, and we try to do that, every 3 months or so.
And this is going to sound off the wall, but I'd like to just set the stage for the younger goats listening. You hear a term a lot in real estate that's hard to quantify, but there's something called appreciation. And that's when a property naturally, over the course of time gains value if it's in, a spot that becomes more desirable. The cool thing about appreciation is it sort of happens naturally and without you doing much. And you can even be sort of blind to it. And Scott, in his introduction, said that he had purchased in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, which I'm sure if you pull the nation apart in a map, Mount Pleasant has gone through one of the biggest appreciation booms, I think, compared to most places. So appreciation, quite literally, Scott is sitting at his desk and his house is becoming worth more by him doing nothing. Scott, have you felt that? Like your neighborhood, the value of where you purchased, like how did you know Mount Pleasant was going to be undergoing that change? But that's a super cool just reminder. Like Scott is technically making money while talking to 2 Naval Academy grads too. That's the power of real estate.
Have you had any regrets purchasing any of your properties? I always like asking people that.
So let's touch on appreciation and if you've ever had any regrets buying properties.
Yeah, so let's talk about. We'll start with the regrets. Not that it was a regret, but it was it was bad timing, right? So when me and my wife we bought our first house, it was in 2007.
Yeah.
And thankfully, her father had helped us fix it up, and he sent his crew down to like redo the floors, and he helped us.
Hopefully, they sent donuts
not
too
lose
from
money
Dunkin' Donuts
on that one. So we were able to get out from that deal. It was maybe a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Not enough for like enough for us at the time, but not like our place where we wanted to live 20 years from now.
Yeah. How long did you stay in that house? I'm curious, especially buying in 2007.
It was less than 5 years. So it was maybe 3 or 4 years. And if it wasn't for like her them helping us like fix it up,
that work,
we would have probably lost it, $50,000 or something, and we wouldn't have been able to sell it and move on to the next one. So
got it.
So anyway, so timing was really bad on that. We got out from under it, basically break even. The next deal was a better deal. So we bought a house in Massachusetts. Maybe we rented for about a year or two after we sold that house. So we had nothing to sell. And we ended up buying this home that was in foreclosure in a beautiful neighborhood. The framer of the neighborhood owned this house, and it was on 2 acres just outside of Boston. And we're able to get a really good deal on that one, which leads me to Mount Pleasant, which involved no research on my end, but it was a vision board. So me and my wife were sitting around at Massachusetts, maybe one February freezing cold night in the dark ages,
every night,
the dark ages of winter. Right. And we're like, hey, if we were to live somewhere and it wasn't because like we grew up there or because like we work there, like where would we live? And so we didn't like really have a place in mind, but we described it like, all right, well, we would want to live near the beach. We would want to live where it's warm most of the year. We would want to live somewhere where it's close to an airport so we could fly to different places. We would want to live in a town that had a good school system. And we had like 5 or 6 other things. So it's like this vision board, right? And we kind of tucked it away and finished the bottle of wine or whatever, right? And so
so naturally you landed on Baltimore, Maryland.
And so and then a couple of years later, on our 10-year anniversary, my dad had just retired from work. And I said, hey, Dad, you want to fly up to watch the kids for a week? Michelle and I want to go on a 10-year anniversary trip. And we love the Zac Brown band. We were in the Zamley, like fan club members, like, and so we kind of planned this really cool trip to go see a few shows. One was in Raleigh, North Carolina. The other one was in Atlanta. And the last leg of that trip was Charleston. And I had never been to Charleston at the time. Like I didn't go through nuke school. It was always too far off of 95 to like want to stop there, going north or south on 95. And so I'd never been to Charleston, heard great things about it. And I remember walking out, parking the car, going out for dinner, like walking out on the beach on Sullivan's Island. So I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but
that'll sell it.
And so we're like walking out onto the beach and we're like, hey, you remember that vision board that we created a couple of years ago? And we're like, this is the place.
Man.
And so,
nailed it.
So, yeah. And then it took us that was 2015, right? And then so we moved here, I think, in 2018. So it took 3 years to pull
right
it off.
before the boom.
And my wife
Sheesh.
found Mount Pleasant. She's more of the researcher. I was like, we're going in that direction. We're heading south. And so, but she found Mount Pleasant. She said, hey, this has a great school system. This is where we want to be. The neighborhood we live in is, it's just, they've just built a Costco like 2 miles up the street. I mean, it's booming, man. And we're like over 100,000 people in Mount Pleasant.
It is booming. I mean, it's insane to see what it's doing. But that's got to feel good from a financial stability standpoint. I mean, you know that you've got equity in your house. If everything went haywire in your life, you got injured, couldn't work, whatever, you have a nest egg.
I wish I bought 2 houses, JD, but we were just trying to scrape and buy. We had left our jobs, like I didn't want to. I'm glad we bought the house we bought, but I should have bought 2.
Yeah. I've actually been looking for a family like yours to adopt me in Mount Pleasant. So I'm only an hour away. I could be there by noon.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So for everybody listening that wants to stay in touch with you, I think they'll fall in love with your personality, but also the diligence that you bring to the table with networking, staying in touch with people. What's the best way that they can get involved in any of the different things that you run?
Yeah, so I think it all kind of starts with SABM Group. And so from SABM, there's links to, 10X Vets, the Academy Fund. We have an investor group as well. We didn't really touch on that today, but we meet once a month. People present opportunities. There's a whole bunch of investors in the group.
Cool.
And then even the real estate accelerator, right? I know there's a lot of people that have gone through that, or the one that Buddy Rushing and the White Feather group leads. I had to convince Buddy to do that. He didn't want to do it at first. And
so he's a product.
There's a whole story there too.
He's a product of the group.
Yeah. Awesome.
But sabmgroup.com. And then seriously, if anybody wants to come to any of our 10X Vets gatherings or be a part of that group, 10xvets.com. And then my email address is Scott with 2 T's at 10xvets.com. And then would love to, connect with you on LinkedIn as well. So.
Awesome.
I have a question about the Academy Fund. What do you guys look at when you're looking to invest in somebody's business or a real estate deal? Do you look at the actual person and, what their history is, or do you look at the actual deal? Sorry, JD, I had to get that selfish.
Yeah, I think that's important because there's a lot of real estate folks in the network. So we're lenders. So we don't invest for the Academy Fund, but we lend. And we do we vet the jockey first. And so it's probably more of, we don't really use the term hard money that much. It's more of almost like a private credit fund that's backed by real estate, right? So we're vetting the person, who are they? What is their experience? What do their academy classmates say about them? Right.
Yeah.
And so we're vetting the jockey first, and then we look at the deal. And so the Academy Fund is a lender, like a bank. We've got to we provide short-term bridge financing on real estate projects. So people that need to close quickly, people that can't get bank financing right away for a project, something like that, where we'll come in, we'll lend the money. And then typically our loans are 9 months to 12 months on average, up to 2 years max. And we provide that financial bridge for somebody to purchase a property rather than having to use their own cash. And then lastly, we look for the exit plan, because you don't want to be in a private money loan you want to be out of it as soon as you can, right? Because it's higher interest rates. So, what's your exit plan? Is it to sell the property? Is it to refinance this out with permanent financing? And so, those are all the things we typically look for.
That's awesome. Do you like more so actively investing, or do you like the lending side? Because ultimately, I think the lending side is where the ultimate goal is, because you're doing less of the work, but you're still getting the return. So I'm just interested in your perspective. Obviously, you're already on the lending side, so you're winning. But just out of personal curiosity, which one do you lean towards?
Yeah, I think I like the type of investing where you do as little work as possible. So,
Yeah.
so you'll never find me like, doing like probably like a fix and flip project, or, like having, some sort of like a rental property that I have to maintain and keep up. But I really, so I enjoy investing. Now, the difference between investing and lending, I like them both, right? But they're two different types of investments.
Mhm.
Right now, what you have is you've got a lot of investors who were in equity deals, kind of transitioning over to like, oh, we want to be in lending deals, right? Because, the stock market is really high, the real estate market has gone up a lot, and lending, especially if you're in the first lien position on a project, it's not a bad place to be, right? You're at the top of the capital stack. And we started the Academy Fund with this. We could have done an equity fund, and we probably will do one at some point, but we started with lending because it cash flows right away for investors, right?
Yeah.
You invest money today, a month later, you get your first check in the mail, or your first direct deposit, or you get paid right away because we charge interest. And so people like that, right? So it's relatively safe. For the Academy Fund, all of our borrowers are veterans, so there's a high quality aspect to it. And every month we come knocking at your door with money. So, and it's not just for accredited investors. I mean, that's like, so our fund is for accredited investors, but we also have loan participation opportunities where we'll take a loan that we've already underwritten, that it's in good standing. We want to free up our capital so we can go and do the next deal. So we say, hey, here's a loan. We're 6 months into it. Project's moving right along. Borrower hasn't missed any payments. And who would like to participate in this loan alongside of us? We've already done diligence. We've already underwritten it. And those opportunities are open for both, non-accredited investors and accredited investors, because it's not a security. So we've got opportunities like that for investors. So I like them both, man. I think they both equity investments and debt investments fit into your portfolio in some way, and can work together for sure.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Most of the time, I find that if you're like earlier in your career, you would like to do more active investing. That way you're building up your capital. And then once you have the capital, you can lend it out. That's the kind of route that I'm personally taking. Me and JD are personally taking. So I think it all depends, because I started my career off doing short-term rentals. Would I do it now? No, absolutely not. Just because it takes time. Which I don't necessarily have right now. So that's awesome.
I had a bride put a champagne bottle on a burner in one of my Airbnbs and for not turn it off, and that was it. That
a
broke
champagne bottle in a burner
on top of an oven burner. And the oven was on, and after the fire department was there, I was done with Airbnb. So passive is better. Well, Scott, and then for direct communication, how do people actually get in touch with you, or what's the best way?
Yeah. So, my email address is scott@10xvets.com. You're welcome to email me there, or if anybody's ever in the Charleston area and wants to grab a coffee or meet up, happy to meet up, and
Awesome.
just shoot me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And that's probably the easiest ways to connect.
Sweet.
Is there a more direct way? I don't know.
No, that's pretty good.
On my door, man.
No, I'm joking.
Any excuse for me to get to Mount Pleasant, I'll take it. Scott, thank you so much. You're a class act. Always fun talking with you. I'm so excited to see you in a couple weeks. I think midshipmen and alumni alike can learn a lot from you. The way that you remember things about people, the way you make people feel when you network with them is really special. So Geoffrey and I are so excited to see it. We're really excited to talk to you on the panel, which is going to be really cool. Right now,
I have more questions. Don't worry.
I got a lot of questions.
I have a whole list.
we got about 265 people coming to the summit, so I think there's going to be a range of questions from totally newbie to seasoned, which is all the better. So thank you so much, Scott, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, gents. Have a good weekend.